The number one factor for what it really means to be awake, knowing about the occult and understanding that there are both light and dark aspects to it. What is the occult and why should you know about it? The occult is a body of science which is not widely known to the general population, consisting of hidden knowledge about the workings of the human psyche and the laws of nature, both the seen laws, meaning the physical laws, the physical sciences, and the unseen laws, meaning the spiritual laws, the laws that govern morality, the laws that govern behavioral consequence. The key point to keep in mind here is that the occult is hidden knowledge. It doesn't mean bad, it doesn't mean evil, it doesn't mean negative, it doesn't mean Satanism, voodoo, or any other specific occult practices. The occult is a generalized terminology for hidden knowledge, for knowledge which has been hidden from people's view. So hey, could that include sciences that people don't really understand about how energy works in the universe, how we could gain energy from different methodologies other than internal combustion engines or burning fuel or things like that? Sure, all of those things are occult knowledge. We have to understand the difference between these two terms, exoteric and esoteric. Exoteric means something that is intended for or likely to be understood by the general public. Okay, it's common knowledge. The word exoteric comes from the Greek adjective exoterikos. Exoterikos in Greek means external or outside of. The core of truth lies at the very center, at the bullseye. That's what we ultimately want to get to if we're going to transform ourselves and transform our society for the better. The esoteric is information which is intended for or likely to be understood by only a small number of people with specialized knowledge or interest. The esoteric is that which is hidden or occulted. It is mysterious. It is beyond the range of ordinary knowledge, experience, or perception. It is that which is communicated only to the initiated. The initiated means those who have begun a process of initiation. The knowledge of the self, the knowledge of the human psyche and how the psyche operates, its components, its aspects, its motivations, its desires, etc. What drives us? What's going on at a subconscious level? How our reality is built, it's built atop knowledge. On top of that knowledge as a foundation, you either have a grasp or an understanding of those principles or you do not. So these are decision-making, filtering processes. These processes take place in the human mind and are chosen by each individual based upon the available information that they have taken in. So if you haven't done your grammar or you haven't aggregated your knowledge in step number one of this process, you can't possibly do the processing and come to an understanding of it. That's why so many people have no understanding of the principles of the occult sciences, because they haven't even started beginning to learn what the occult is or what it contains. Then the third step in this process is acting. Actually taking action based upon your understanding. Each individual in a society, each individual's behavior is based upon the quality of their decision-making processes that they exercise in step number two, which in turn were based on the quality of the available information which they took in. Wisdom is action. It's different than knowledge. It's different than understanding. Knowledge is something that exists inherently, and you can take it in objectively. Understanding is an internal process that goes on within the self, based upon the knowledge that you've taken in and processed. And then wisdom is action. It's what you do in the world with the knowledge that you have accrued and understood. The lack of knowledge is ignorance. The lack of understanding is confusion. And the lack of wisdom is folly. One more level above that is what we get based upon what we've done. What is manifested? What is generated? What do we experience? The manifested reality. It's the quality of the conditions that we experience. And the quality of the condition which manifests collectively in our society, in any society, is based upon the aggregate quality of behavior within that society. So again, it's a stepwise progression. What we've taken in, what we've come to understand, how we behave, what we get. If you understand one slide, deeply, deeply understand this process, because this is what the dark occultists do not want people to understand. That's the real law of attraction, folks. Not the New Age variant of it, not the New Age hokum mysticism. I want to sell 1 billion books telling people what they want to hear, law of attraction. Okay? This is how the universe actually works inherently. And it describes not only how it works, but our relationship to that process. And this is what they don't want you to know. The Comitian tradition, this is the ancient Egyptian system of moral teachings, of occult practices and beliefs. The Comitian people were from Egypt, which was then called Kemet. Kem or Kemet means the black land or dark in ancient Egyptian. The term may have referred to the darkness of the soil of ancient Egypt caused by the mineral deposits left by the yearly overflow of the Nile River in the Nile Valley. The English word Egypt is derived from the Greek Aegyptos, which means Memphis. The original name in Comitian or in ancient Egyptian for the city of Memphis was called Hut-ka-Ptah. Hut-ka-Ptah means the temple of the spirit of Ptah. Ptah is one of the highest creator gods in the Egyptian pantheon of gods and goddesses. He was considered a very important creator god. He was actually considered the first and greatest of the alchemists, those from Chem, the teachers from Chem, where the word alchemist and alchemy comes from. So Ptah was considered one of the original master teachers. He is often equivalated with Thoth, with Hermes Trismegistus in different occult traditions. Today, the word that modern Egyptians use for the nation of Egypt is Misr, which is derived from the Hebrew name for Egypt, Mizraim. Mizraim in Hebrew means a narrow place or narrow straits. This name, narrow straits, ultimately refers to the moral teachings of ancient Chem and the Comitian tradition, because they did teach a strict set of principles regarding natural or moral law. I'll get to that in a moment. I just want to look at some of their symbolism in the example of the Comitian Trinity. Just like Christianity, which derived its Trinity from the ancient Comitian culture, the Comitians had a trinity of 2 gods and a goddess. This was Osiris, Isis, and Horus. Osiris, depicted there in the middle, was the creator god of this trinity. He was the Father, God the Father, in other words. But what he symbolically represented in this allegorical symbolism of this trinity was the creative essence of the human being, which is the thought process, the mind. The thing that ultimately has to go to work first for anything to get created. Anything we want to create or put into manifestation has to ultimately work through the mental realm first. You want to build a computer, you want to build a podium, you want to build a home, any piece of technology, it has to exist first in the realm of mind. It has to be thought about archetypally, the need for it, its purpose. Then you have to go through the process of what you're going to do to make that happen and come into manifestation. All mental processes. So creation follows the mind, hence the mind, the thoughts, that's the Father figure, the creator God. And that's what Osiris represented. Isis was the goddess figure in this trinity, depicted on the right. She was the divine mother, or in other words, the emotional aspects of the being, the spirit in which we do something, our spiritual essence, the sacred feminine essence. And then when those 2 things come together, our cares, our desires, our spirit, combined with our mental faculties of the mind, then what happens? We act in the world, and something is generated as a result. And this was Horus. He was the male child because he represented action, the masculine principle. And he was considered the savior figure, the one that was ultimately born to redeem the world through right action. Now, right action is what's ultimately going to redeem the world. And you can only take right action if you have right knowledge about the difference between right and wrong behavior. So he represented right action, that which we do with our body. It's a sacred masculine force. Very powerful if we understand the Trinity as such, that it is just different aspects of our unconsciousness: thought, emotion, and action. You see the god Osiris, the creator god, in the middle, and this is representative of the mind, specifically the brain physiology. You have the left brain set on Osiris's left-hand side. Whoever made this graphic, I didn't make the colors in the background, I just found this graphic like this. The person probably already had a very good understanding that this represented the brain, because they actually depicted the frequencies that often represent the left and right brain. Red usually represents the left brain tendencies or capabilities, and blue is usually symbolic of the right brain, the intuitive and creative capacities. Another aspect of the Cometian tradition was the goddess Ma'at. Perhaps one of the most powerful allegorical representations was Ma'at. There was no higher god or goddess than Ma'at, because she represented natural law itself. She was the law. So the goddess Ma'at represented truth, law, and justice among the Cometian people. The purpose of coming into harmony with the teachings of Ma'at, this mother goddess figure, was to learn how to avoid self-inflicted chaos by learning the laws of morality, and thus not generating chaos for yourself by choosing wrong action. The Cometians taught what is known as the negative confessions of Ma'at. I call these apophatic confessions, coming from the Greek term apophasis, which means to say that which something is not, to say that which something definitively is not and has nothing to do with and is nothing like. That's the process of apophasis. You're going to say, well, if I want to describe right action, what do I want to really convey about it? I want to say it is the opposite of action that is employed toward a harmful end. It does not create harm to another being when I take that action. That's an apophatic definition of what a right is. There was a whole laundry list of apophatic confessions, or in other words, things that you had to say in the afterlife realm to this goddess when you went into the realm of judgment upon dying, that you did not do. She didn't want to know what your works were. She wanted to know what your works were not. She wanted to know, did you not engage in these things? And if you did not engage in these things, then I can say you truly were a good being. You truly understood the difference between right and wrong because you didn't do any of these wrong behaviors. This was the real narrow straits that we're talking about. It was a very narrow pathway that they defined morality to be. And in the story, in the allegorical story of the afterlife, when you went into the hall or chamber of Ma'at, the god Anubis would take the initiate or the dead being's heart, and they would weigh it on Ma'at's scale. And this represented, did they have a light heart? Did they truly understand the difference between right and wrong? Did they try to live that way all the time? Did they not make excuses and justifications? Let's look at the tradition of alchemy. This came out of the Egyptian tradition. Again, to reemphasize, it's what all these traditions were about: teaching morality to their adherents, teaching the difference between right and wrong, and teaching how natural law operates, so we could transform from a being that is in ignorance of that knowledge to a being that is actually enlightened to that knowledge, and then could practically put that knowledge into work in real life. Alchemy literally means from chem. Al is a prefix that means from or related to or out of, and then chem, of course, meant black in ancient Egyptian and was often the name used for Egypt. So it was from darkness, out of darkness. Alchemy is an occult tradition taught through allegories. An allegory, again, is a cryptic story, poem, or picture that can be interpreted or decoded in order to reveal a hidden meaning, typically a moral lesson. What lesson were they trying to communicate to people by building statues? And you'd have to know the background of the story of these gods to really be able to decode, what the allegory is. Showing that statue to somebody who's never heard of Horus, Osiris, or Isis wouldn't really do much. But if you understand the verbal traditions and the written stories about those gods, then you understand what they represented, and the allegory can be decoded. That's how occultism works. It works through relational and correlative thinking. Some of the symbols in the symbolic tradition of allegory, very simple, basic, rudimentary ones. There's so many of them you can get lost in them all. There were elemental forces that the alchemists wanted to convey information about and basically define, and they had a symbol for them, and then they interpreted that allegorically. And here's some basic ones. The symbol of earth, an inverted equilateral triangle with a line going through about the 2/3 point if you take the measure from the base to the apex. The symbol of earth represented inherent characteristics of the being. Air represented the intellect, and that is the pure intellect, meaning the left brain modality, our ability to compute, our ability to define things logically, our ability to break things down, analyze, etc. Water, the inverted triangle, represented emotion, intuition, and creativity. Again, that sacred feminine essence, dealing with largely emotion and the sacred feminine qualities. And then fire, an upward pointing triangle. Again, we've seen that inverted triangle in water, representing the chalice, called the chalice in many older symbolic traditions. And the element of fire in alchemy was the upright pointing triangle, which represented the blade, or again, a rudimentary masculine phallic symbol representing action, willpower, and courage. Okay, the actual ability to create change within oneself and to go out and create change in the world. Then there was a fifth element. So you have earth, air, water, and fire, and then you had the quintessence, meaning the fifth essence. The fifth element was spirit, represented by a solar wheel with 8 spokes, a circle and then an eight-spoke cross in the middle of it. This represented the divine spark or the divine essence within all of us. You know, the essence of the source, the creator, the underlying intelligence in nature, which is ultimately present in everything within nature, including us. Alchemists speak of something called prima materia, or starting matter. Starting substance is what prima materia was. Again, the starting substance is the human being that needs to be purified. It needs the impurities removed from them so that they can come to a more clear and accurate and de-occulted understanding of the laws of nature. The starting substance, or prima materia, is used at the inception of the alchemical work, the beginning. Silver is considered to be one of the starting substances. There are others, but silver is one of the main sources of prima materia in alchemy. The alchemical symbol for silver is associated with the moon because silver represented in alchemy the feminine aspects of the human psyche, including the attributes of intuition, inner wisdom, compassion, open-mindedness, and contemplation. And that's what you need to begin. You need that sense of open-mindedness, of desire, of willing to learn, willing to open yourself up and receive. The truth is always out there, but we have to be open to receive it. That's a feminine quality. Absolutely essential and central to the tradition of Kabbalah, which means reception. The second phase of alchemical transformation is albedo, which means whitening. Albedo represents the process of spiritual purification, the burning out of impurities from the salt or hardened ego. The salt in this step is reduced into quicksilver or mercury, which represents fluidity, and the process of rapid mental, emotional, and spiritual change, and the strengthening of the sacred feminine essence, leading to the engagement of the imagination, the only substance, the only essence from which the elixir of life or the awakened or enlightened mind can then be made. This step is the awakening process, the awakening step. It's when we recognize the world isn't what we thought it was, and we start developing a desire for more than the base things in life. We start developing a desire to know the truth, the desire to reach higher realms of consciousness, the desire to better ourselves and be better than we were the day before. Well, we're going to start working upon ourselves by taking in the truth and letting go of beliefs and letting go of impurities in our thought processes and bringing our consciousness into alignment with truth and with morality. That's this step of the process, whitening, purification. The third and final phase of the alchemical, quote, great work is rubedo, Rubedo means reddening, the transmutation into gold or sulfur, alchemical substances, gold or sulfur. And they represented purified and enlightened consciousness. The elemental fire of the philosopher's stone. Again, that's why it was symbolized by a red elixir. Often the philosopher's stone was depicted as a red stone itself. And that represented the unification of man, which was the limited being, with the divine will, often represented by a red color as well, the unlimited. That's alchemy in a nutshell. Very simple explanation of the allegorical tradition. Let's briefly look at the Hermetic tradition. Heed these words, ye who wish to probe the depths of nature. If you do not find within yourself that which you seek, neither will you find it outside of yourself. If you ignore the wonders of your own house, how do you expect to find other wonders? In you is hidden the treasure of treasures. Know thyself, and you will know the universe and the gods. To know the self is to know the universe. To know the universe is to know the self. It's to understand the dynamic interplay between free will and natural law, a theme that comes up over and over and over again in occult traditions and teachings.